Okay, so I modified our driver program a little to actually create a small array list of 3 items. So I basically just put a loop around the code that interacted with the user so that they can enter and create 3 audio items. Same way we did before, I didn't change any of that. Only the difference is I now, after they created an item, I added that item to our list. So instead of creating just a single item, I'm going to add each item to a small list of size 3. And then I'm going to cycle through that list and I'm going to print out each item and then also play the sample. So this will work exactly like the program we just wrote, except it'll allow me to basically run it 3 times as opposed to just once. Okay, so if I run this, I can enter in rainbow connection, 99 cents, 180 seconds, it's a music item by Kermit, and it's folk. Okay, so now I'm on to the next one. I probably want to put a little print line in there, and this is going to be my Java programming, $59.99 by, and we said it was some really long number of seconds. It's a book. The author is Deedle, and it's got 24 chapters. And now I'm on to my 3rd item. We'll say the Star Spangled Banner. It's on sale for 25 cents because it's such a classic. I don't actually know how long it is. Let's say it's 120 seconds long. It's music, Francis Scott Keys, and the genre, we'll just call it a classic. Actually, we'll call it an anthem, okay? And so now we cycle through that list of 3, and for each one we print the appropriate toString. So the one that prints the artist and the genre if it's music, and then we print the sample, 30 seconds long. Then the next one prints the author and the number of chapters because it's a book, and we print the sample, which is based on the number of chapters, again because this is a book. And then for the last piece of music, we again invoke the toString and the play sample from music. So same idea as what we just did, only I just allowed us to have 3 items instead of having just 1. Okay. So again, the key things here are the declared type. In this case, we're declaring that our array list only holds all audio items. So each, again, item that we create is going to be of type audio item. That's the declared type. But the actual type is either going to be audio music item or it's going to be audio book item, depending on how we create it, depending on what the user enters. So that means we can only ever invoke methods that are declared in the audio item class because that's the declared type. Oops. But what if you want to access a method in the child class? So what if, for example, if I'm inside this else and I say, well, if I'm inside the else, I know I'm creating a book. Maybe I want to be able to access some of that information about a book. Maybe I want to be able to print out the number of chapters or be able to print out the author. Or maybe I want to look across all my music items and I want to be able to print out all the genres. Well, I can't ever invoke getGenre or getAuthor because those those methods are not declared an audio item. So I am not allowed to say, item.getAuthor. That's going to give me a compiler error because author is not declared in the audio item class. There's no method called getAuthor in the audio item class. Now that's the same even if I do it up here after I just declared it, instantiated it to be an audio book item. I can't then get the author because Java just evaluates each line item individually. It doesn't take the whole block into consideration. The compiler only looks one line at a time. So the compiler just looks at this line in isolation and the compiler says, what's the declared type of item? Okay, it's an audio item. Does the method getAuthor exist in the audio item class? No, it does not. So this line is not allowed. Okay, so we're never allowed to invoke a method from the actual class if it doesn't exist in the declared class. We're just not allowed to do it. The compiler will not allow it. But what if I want to do that? Right? What if I want to print out the genres only if it's a music item? And I might want to print out the author, but only if it's a book item. So how can I do that? Well, we can do that with what's called a narrowing conversion. It's also called a cast or a downcast. So what this allows us to do is it allows us to temporarily have the compiler treat an object as if it's a different type. And before we do that, we always use instance of, which we've seen previously in our equals method, to make sure that that object we're looking at actually is the type we want to cast to. Because casting is very powerful. It allows you to cast from any type to any other type. Whether or not it's the real actual type, it'll still allow it. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're always first checking that it's the type we want it to be or think that it is, and then we cast it. Okay, so let's take a look at what this looks like inside of our code here. So we're going to have the pair of statements. We're going to have the instance of, so we're going to say if item is an instance of audio music item, and if it is, then I need to temporarily cast it to be that type. And then I can go ahead and print out the genre. With the get genre method. Not item, music item. Because the declared type of music item is audio music item. So I am totally allowed to do that. The compiler says, okay, what's the declared type of this object? Audio music item. Is there a get genre method in the audio music item class? There certainly is. So this is a legal statement. Okay. And we can do the same thing for our books. If any of our items is an instance of the audio book item class, then we can declare a temporary or local variable of type audio book item, and we can cast our item to be of that type, and then we can access any of those methods in the audio book item class. Such as get author. So again, both of this pair of statements is needed. We need both the instance of conditional, because that puts a check on the fact that this object really is the type we think it is. But then even though we're inside that conditional, we still need to tell the compiler to treat it that way. So that's what the cast does. If we don't have the cast, then it doesn't matter that we're inside the conditional. We still can't invoke that method. So we definitely need the cast. Without the instance of, what this code would do is it would cast every single item to type audio music item, even my book objects, and that would throw an exception and crash our program. Because we're allowed to cast from any one type to the other, even if it's not right. So Java will let me cast a book item to be type audio music, but then the program will crash when it tries to do so. So we always need this combination of the two statements. We need the instance of check, and then we need the actual cast. Again, the instance of check makes sure it's the kind of item we think it should be, and the cast forces the compiler to treat it that way. Okay? So the combination of these two statements allows you to invoke methods from the actual class. Because if we're at a point in the program where we say, well, I need a method from that child class that isn't declared in the parent class, this is the way that I do that. So for example, if we had a list of employees declared as employee type, and we wanted to pay all of them, we're allowed to do that. We're allowed to invoke the pay method because it's declared in the employee class, so that will work. And of course the right version will be called, whether it's a salaried version or the hourly version or the unpaid version. That'll be based on the actual type. But now let's say we want to process all of our vacation for only our salaried employees. What we can do is we can just go through, as we go through our list, we can check if any one of those employees is a salaried employee, and sorry, that should say salaried and paid employee. And if it is, we just cast it to be that type, and then we can go ahead and invoke vacation. We can also do it without the local variable with this syntax here, which basically just temporarily tells the compiler to treat E like a salaried paid employee. Note that this does not change the actual or the declared type of E. It does not change the declared type of E. It just tells the compiler to temporarily treat the variable of that as an object of that other type. Okay, so again, we need both. We need the instance of and we need the cast. We do both in order to be able to invoke a method that's declared in the child class but isn't declared in the parent class. Okay, so that's what we did. We printed the genres of just the music items, and we did that by using those combination of two statements.